Contact. Power. Base running. Throwing. Fielding. Only the Avatar, master of all. The 5-tool player is a rare and prized specimen on the baseball field. Think Inner Circle Hall of Famers like Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente, and Ken Griffey Jr., or guys that will become first ballot Hall of Famers the instant they're eligible, like Mike Trout or Mookie Betts. The type of special player that comes along only a few times in a generation. Today, we're extremely fortunate as baseball fans to be in a sort of renaissance when it comes to 5-tool players, with guys like Ellie De La Cruz, Byron Buxton, and Bobby Witt Jr. showing off their raw skill in all aspects of the game. That being said, I wanted to try and create a new sabermetric stat that quantifies how toolsy a player is in a given season. That is to say, how well did a player perform with regards to contact, power, base running, fielding, and throwing throughout all 162 games? I call it tools. Let's go through how it works. The tool stat measures how well qualified players exhibited each of the 5 tools across a season. By qualified players, I mean players that are both eligible for end-of-season awards and have enough innings and opportunities as measured by StatCast, which is especially relevant in the cases of fielding and throwing. For the 2025 season, 144 players were considered qualified. Each tool will usually be represented by a standard rate stat and a StatCast stat, as I wanted to give equal weight to both positive results and positive underlying stats where available. For the contact tool, players will be evaluated based on batting average and in-zone contact percentage. For the power tool, players will be evaluated based on isolated power and EV50. For the base running tool, players will be evaluated based on base running runs and maximum sprint speed. For the throwing tool, players will be evaluated based on StatCast overall arm strength. And finally, for the fielding tool, players will be evaluated based on fielding runs. For the tools evaluated using one stat, the MLB leader will be assigned a value of 1, while the worst performers will be assigned a value of 0.2. For the tools evaluated using 2 stats, the MLB leader for each stat will be assigned a value of 0.5, while the worst performers for that stat will be assigned a value of 0.1. All other players will be assigned values linearly in accordance with their ranking within a stat. The maximum possible value for each tool is 1, while the minimum possible value for each tool is 0.2. Thus, the highest value for tools overall is 5, while the minimum value is 1. Now that the rules are out of the way, let's get more in depth into the numbers. Starting out with contact, we'll be looking at batting average and in-zone contact percentage. For the batting average component, Aaron Judge gets assigned a value of 0.5 after leading the majors with a .331 average, while Oneil Cruz gets assigned a value of 0.1 with a major's worst 200 average. Here's what our top and bottom 10 look like for the batting average component of the contact tool. For in-zone contact percentage, Stephen Kwan is the league leader at 96.1%, while Rafael Devers brings up the rear at 71.4%. Here's our top and bottom 10. Putting both components together, our top 10 contact players are as follows. Number 10, Ernie Clement, with a total contact tool value of 913. Number 9, Jose Ramirez, also at 913. Number 8, Sal Frelick at 916. Number 7, Xavier Edwards at 919. Number 6, Brendan Donovan at 924. Number 5, Bo Bichette at 936. Number 4, Geraldo Perdomo at 947. Number 3, Luis Arias at 964. Number 2, Nico Herner at 975. And at number 1, Jacob Wilson with a total contact tool value of 983. For power, we're focusing on isolated power and EV50, which is an average of about as hard as 50% batted balls. Aaron Judge once again leads the pack in isolated power at 357, while Chase Meadroth comes in last at 067. For EV50, Oneil Cruz barely beats out Aaron Judge to take first place with an EV50 of 107.3 miles per hour, while at the bottom we have known contact specialist Luis Arraez at 93.6 miles per hour. Putting it all together, the top 10 power players for 2025 are number 10, Cal Big Dumper Raleigh, with a total power tool value of 930. Number 9, Byron Buxton at 933. Number 8, Joe Adell at 936. Number 7, Corbin Carroll, also at 936. Number 6, Pete Alonso at 955. Number 5, Juan Soto, also at 955. Number 4, Junior Caminero, also at 955. Number 3, Kyle Schwarber at 980. Number 2, Shohei Ohtani at 986. And at number 1, Big Aaron Judge with a total power tool value of 997. For base running, we'll take a look at base running runs and sprint speed. Remember, not all good base runners are fast, and not all fast guys are good base runners. For base running runs, we have Corbin Carroll at the top with 10.3, while Josh Bell comes in last with negative 6.1. For sprint speed, Trey Turner races to a first place finish at 30.3 feet per second, while Alejandro Kirk lags behind in last at 24.3 feet per second. After adding the values for base running runs and sprint speed together, the top 10 base running players are number 10, Julio Rodriguez, with a total base running tool value of 927. Number 9, Oneil Cruz at 938. Number 8, Jarren Duran at 944. Number 7, Jeremy Pena, also at 944. Number 6, Pete Crow Armstrong at 955. Number 5, Ellie De La Cruz at 961. Number 4, Bobby Witt Jr. at 980. And in a three-way tie for first place at 992, Corbin Carroll, Byron Buxton, and Trey Turner. For throwing, we'll only be looking at overall arm strength as measured by StatCast. At the top is Oneil Cruz at 98.2 miles per hour. Last place goes to Josh Bell at 63.5 miles per hour. Of our 144 qualified players, 3 did not qualify for this metric due to a lack of throw opportunities as reported by StatCast: Andrew McCutchen, Marcell Ozuna, and Kyle Schwarber. As such, these 3 will receive the minimum value for this tool at 0.2, while Josh Bell gets a slight boost for simply being qualified. Before moving to our top 10, I'd like to bring up Mr. Shohei Ohtani. Pitchers don't normally have a StatCast overall arm strength measurement, but the dude had a 95th percentile fastball velocity this year, which is around 98.1 miles per hour on average. For ranking purposes, I'll give him a 75th percentile arm strength value, which would give him an overall arm strength of about 87 miles per hour and a value of 0.807. That leaves us with our top 10. Number 10, Jung-Hoo Lee, with an arm tool value of 949. Number 9, Adolis Garcia at 955. Number 8, Ellie De La Cruz at 960. Number 7, Pete Crow Armstrong at 966. Number 6, Julio Rodriguez at 972. Number 5, Ceddanne Rafaela at 977. Number 4, Brenton Doyle at 983. Number 3, Andy Pages at 989. Number 2, Fernando Tatis Jr. at 994. And at number 1, O'Neal Cruz with an arm value of 1. Fielding, like throwing, will only look at a single stat. In this case, fielding runs. This time, we have even more players, 15 to be exact, that don't qualify due to a lack of innings. Christian Yelich, Mike Trout, Seiya Suzuki, George Springer, Kyle Schwarber, Brent Rooker, Jorge Polanco, Marcell Ozuna, Shohei Ohtani, Andrew McCutchen, Kyle Manzardo, Trevor Larnach, Yandy Diaz, Rafael Devers, and Josh Bell. That just leaves us with our top 10 in fielding. Number 10, Stephen Kwan, with a field tool value of 944. Number 9, Andy Pages at 950. Number 8, Nico Horner at 957. Number 7, Maikel Garcia at 963. Number 6, Mason Wynn at 969. Number 5, Ke'Bryan Hayes at 975. Number 4, Bobby Witt Jr. at 981. Number 3, Pete Crow Armstrong at 988. Number 2, Ceddanne Rafaela at 994. And at number 1, Alejandro Kirk with a fielding tool value of 1. Now that we've gone through all 5 tools, it's time to find out who our top 10 toolsiest players were for the 2025 season. Starting at number 10, we have Michael Harris II with a tools value of 3.894. His biggest factors were running, throwing, and fielding, while also posting solid contact and power tools. Coming in at number 9, we have Cody Bellinger with a tools value of 3.925. He got there with his great contact, arm, and field values, while having a good run value and a slightly above average power value. Next up at number 8 is Andy Pages with a tools value of 3.999. He profiled similarly to Bellinger in terms of contact, power, and running, but posted top 10 marks for throwing and fielding. Lucky number 7 is Maikel Garcia with a tools value of 4.038. His 2 best tools were contact and fielding, while still remaining well above average in throwing, above average in running, and with some decent power. At number 6, we have Byron Buxton with a tools value of 4.048. The eye test profiles him as a power speed guy, and the numbers back it up. He posted top 10 marks in power and running, while still managing a great throwing value, a good fielding value, and a decent contact value. Getting into our top 5, we have another power speed threat in Corbin Carroll at 4.052. His profile is extremely similar to Buxton, with top 10 marks in power and running, slightly better in fielding, a bit worse in throwing, and with a similar contact value. Just missing the podium at number 4 is Pete Crow Armstrong at 4.072, who posted top 10 marks in running, throwing, and fielding, with decent power to boot. His contact tool was his only weak link, but can you really knock a player for having a 30-30 season while winning a Gold Glove award in center field? The bronze medal for the 2025 season goes to El Nino Fernando Tatis Jr., with a tools value of 4.227. His profile is surprisingly similar to PCA, as he sacrifices a little bit of running and fielding for a much better contact tool and an improved power tool. Our silver medalist this time around is Julio Rodriguez, with a tools value of 4.233. He posted top 10 marks in running and throwing, top 15 marks in fielding, and a mark just outside the top 20 in power. Like PCA, his contact tool was his weakest link, but also like PCA, he put together a 30-30 season with excellent defense in center field. Finally, at number 1, Our most toolsy player for the 2025 season was Bobby Witt Jr., with a tools value of 4.417. This one is self-explanatory. Top 5 in running and fielding, top 25 in power, top 30 in throwing, and top 35 in contact. He's in the 75th percentile or higher for all tools. That's just insane. Now, just for fun, let's introduce Tools Plus. Like any plus stat, 100 is average, higher is better, lower is worse. If we run the numbers, our toolsiest player, Bobby Witt Jr., has a Tools Plus value of 149, nearly 50% better than average. Here's our top and bottom Tools Plus players for 2025. Okay, inventing a new, ostensibly all-encompassing sabermetric stat is great and all that, but how does it compare to something more established, like, say, WAR?
Good question.
Plotting tools value versus F4 gives us an R-squared of just under 0.4, which indicates a mild correlation. The trend is there, but let's take a look at all these dots that don't even come close to the trend line. These are our outliers, and they go both ways. Some guys, like Kyle Schwarber, aren't very toolsy, but accumulate high WAR totals due to their incredible offense. Conversely, other players are incredibly toolsy, but didn't have the results to back it up. For example, Michael Harris has great defensive metrics and speed, as well as decent pop, but was let down by a poor walk percentage and by underperforming his expected batting average. So let's take a look at this correlation again, but with the following outlier players removed. And bam! We have an R-squared of about 0.6, which is a pretty strong correlation. It did require the removal of about 15% of qualified players, which ultimately means that this metric could still use some refinement. Still, this was fun to develop overall, and I think the conclusions I came to line up with both the eye test and the hard data. Maybe you'll come away from this thinking that this is a pretty novel idea of looking at your favorite players. Or maybe you'll come away thinking this. Nerd! Either way, I hope you got something out of this little sabermetric thought experiment. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is LFG saying adios!